call this meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council Township of North Huron accept the agenda for the February 18th, 2020 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Anita, and seconder is Paul. All in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Not seeing any, we'll continue on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to speak to an item of business that's on the agenda. You will be allowed 2 minutes. It's the only time that the public can speak during the meeting. So if there's anything coming up you would like to speak to, now would be the time to do it. Not seeing any, we'll keep moving on. Consent agenda, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent agenda 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent agendas 5.1.2 to 5.3.4 for information. Do I have a mover? Anita. Seconder is Kevin. Before I call it, 5.3.4, I believe is in that range. That's for Clinton, for 2 members. Do we have 2, did you 2 want to go?
I would like to go.
Okay, and Chris?
Yes.
Okay, then I won't go this year, I'll just stay home, it's okay, don't worry about me, okay.
We'll think of you though.
I don't think we need a motion for that, do we? Okay, you
Thank you.
guys can take care of that, thank you. Let's move right on to. Oh, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yes, Reeve, and you'll have an answer for this. It's the Economic Development Committee. And it just talked about the development of modular homes. Was that the construction, or was it a park, or what was the consideration here?
I wasn't at the last meeting, but we're having, as you're gonna see further in the meeting, and for the next meeting, we're gonna have a conversation. We are really struggling to get employees for the factories and for the local people, so we're considering, could we build modular homes? Because everything that we're working on is still a year to 2 years out to build the first house. It'll be at least 1 year. We have a shortage of 100 and some employees for the factories at the other end of town. We're trying desperately to bust them in, truck them in, do whatever we can. There is no apartments in North Huron. There is no houses to buy. There's nothing, no way we can bring people in here to accommodate the factories. On top of that, with what's going on at the other end of town, we're gonna need another 100 employees overnight for the McDonald's and for the gas stations. So we're into a position where we need 200 employees today. And even if we can get them, we don't have anywhere to put them. So the whole idea of the conversation has been around modular homes and trying to get trailers in or something, or work to get the people that have the Main Street shops here. They're fixing the apartments up above to accommodate as best we can. But I think to date, we're only like 12 or 14 people we've had to. I've reached out to Dave Sparling over at the BIA in Blythe. Is there anything available? In this part of the country, there's nothing available. And we're gonna get hit if the depository goes through in Teeswater, 1,000 people we need overnight. So, we're working on that, and that's part of the acute shortage labor that you hear from time to time, and I will be speaking to that at our next council meeting.
Okay.
But it's nothing that we're doing that my council wouldn't know about, our council wouldn't know about first, okay? Kevin?
Through you, I was at that meeting. It was basically a clarification around the table to get an idea of what is accessible housing. Is basically
Define it?
to define it, what it looks like. We know we need it, but we don't know really what it looks like yet. And that was pretty much the discussion at the economic development, was to try and narrow that down as to what equals affordable housing.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Number 6, public meetings, hearings, and delegations. 6.1 is Jeff Winsard, and forgive me if I spelled that or said that wrong, Jeff.
No, it's all right.
He's going to speak to the proposed flood mapping. We had you down for budget, but apparently you changed before you got here.
That's good. I'm not familiar, how do we,
Oh, just come right up here to the, computer, and Carson will give you a hand here.
Just to clarify, so my last name is Winsenreed. It's a mouthful, yeah. But I'm here on behalf of Steve Jackson. He's a water resources engineer at Maitland Valley. I'm the water resources technician, so I did a lot of the support work with this project. And basically this presentation is just a brief summary of the progress made on the Wingham and region area floodplain mapping update. So the short story here is that basically the mapping's been updated. There are a few proposed changes, and MVCA will be sending out maps and letters to all the impacted landowners. Public Information Center will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, from 3 to 6 p.m. and 7 to 9 p.m. at the Knights of Columbus Center. And here's just a bit of some of the, I guess, the background that went into the project. The first step was to install permanent brass markers throughout Wingham and the lower town for the purpose of creating a network of benchmark elevations. This served a few main purposes. First off was to provide ground control points for the LiDAR survey and surveys for the modeling. And the second was to provide a reference elevation to clearly communicate flood elevations for future development, more or less kind of lock down elevations throughout the town. So we knew all those pink benchmarks there. Those were all surveyed by, I believe it was Culbert out of Goderich, and they were able to assign a specific elevation datum to all of those points. And from there, those points were then used, the LiDAR was flown, it was used as a calibration assessment. So they flew their lasers, I guess for lack of a better word, collected elevation data, and then from there they were able to calibrate that elevation model with those known ground points. And then moving forward, now that we've generated the mapping, we can use those pink benchmarks there, those ground points, to reference any elevation in town, whether we're setting an elevation for a landowner, municipality, whatever the interest party may be. I guess a bit more details about the LiDAR. It's critical information to the floodplain mapping, and thanks to a partnership with North Huron and Morris Turnberry, the funding was secured from the federal program to carry out the LiDAR survey. That was the NDMP. LiDAR basically provides a 3D picture of the ground, and it was flown on May 5th, 2019. I believe that would have been right after we lost snow cover there. So this is a look at the resulting product. It's a terrain map with color representations there. So our red and burnt orange, those are the highest elevations, yellow being the lowest. And so where you can see the green there, that's more or less, it's a quick way to kind of view where that floodplain likely is. So the LiDAR products provide really impressive detail. The accuracy is better than plus or minus 10 centimeters. And I should note, through assessment of that product, we found actually it was within plus or minus 3 centimeters in certain areas. So this is one of the consultant employees there from Geoprocess Research Associates. They carried out surveys of the water surface elevations and hydraulic controls within the river. And this was required because the depth of water at the time the LiDAR was flown, it was a bit higher than I think they would have preferred. So they kind of went in and took actual ground points to further, calibrate their elevations and make sure that everything was in line. This here is an acoustic Doppler current profiler that was used in deeper water, including the house and dam mill pond. I think Steve wanted to kind of put this in there just to show the state-of-the-art equipment that was being used to create this mapping. It's fairly new, and it's being used pretty much everywhere now. It's really impressive how quickly they can gather real accurate data regarding flow and elevations, as well as the bathymetry of the river. This is a bit about the hydrology component of the project. So the province dictates that for floodplain mapping in this part of Ontario, you need to simulate what would happen if Hurricane Hazel were to hit this area. So basically we need to model the rain that happened in Woodbridge in the 1950s and see what would happen if we get the same rain in the Wingham area. River flooding in Wingham is controlled by three major branches of the Maitland River. As we can see on that map there, there's the North, the Little, and the Middle Maitland, all of which are monitored and have an established record of flow for water surveyed into the stream gauge stations. That's in the inset picture there. So there's approximately a 50-year record of flow data for these stations, which is, it's a pretty nice data set for a floodplain mapping project. So basically we have a green station like that at each of those red dots. So we know what's coming in on each of those branches, and then what's leaving town via the, and we call that the Wingham A station, right in the middle. This kind of shows how we put it all together here. So with all the data collected, the consultant was able to put it all together and build and run their models. Using those gauge station records, a flow or quantity of water was defined for a Hurricane Hazel event. And that volume of water was then applied to the terrain base map. So you can see we have our known quantity of rain through Hurricane Hazel, and that was put into a hydrology model.
Jeff, just a sec.
Sure.
Gentlemen, if you don't mind, just, if we can just pay attention to the presentation, I would appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sure. So in the top right-hand corner, that would be the hydrology model, which takes those 50-year records of flows. It's more of a response time exercise, so we know what's coming in on the branches, and that gives us a known quantity or volume of water at each of those stations, and then that's applied to the terrain base map. So it's literally just spilling that amount of water onto the DEM. So the floodplain mapping involves defining both the flood fringe and the floodway, and those are kind of two different components of the lateral extent of the floodplain mapping. Floodway is much more restricted for development because the water is more hazardous due to depth, velocity, or current, or a combination of both. And this will also be important for residents to note in the mapping that when it is, we'll be mailing it to them, and kind of specifying you're affected by floodway, flood fringe, or maybe both. So again, the Public Information Center will be held on Tuesday, March 24th, from 3 to 6 and 7 to 9, the Knights of Columbus Center. Public can also request to make a delegation to the MVCA members on April 15th. And pending comments, then the members may consider adopting the mapping as their official planning and regulation tool on May 20th. And let's see here. I should also note regarding the special policy area, so that's at the 486 development area. So basically now we have this mapping. It's much more, we know it's accurate. We know we have good elevation data, and if we wanted to reassess the hazard mapping for that area, this would provide an opportunity to do so. Not to say that we're planning to do that, but if the municipality chose to review those things, we have better information and better tools to basically kind of look at any flooding area within the town. I don't think it changed much. I think I haven't actually looked at the assessment yet, but from what I heard, it was within inches of what's existing right now. So it's not far off, but we just know we have better mapping tools now. So you take any questions?
Yep. Thank you very much, Jeff. Council, any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
The red outline, that,
Yes.
Is that the water extent for the flood?
No, so that was basically just kind of, it was loosely applied before the project began, just to define, that's the widest set of the study area, more or less. So we knew the LiDAR had to capture within that extent, and the floodplain, I believe, would be within that area.
So do we have a site illustration of where the water would be if that flood happened?
I would have expected one to be in here, but we don't know. I know we're in the process of, I think maybe because it's still a draft, still considered a draft copy. So we're working on getting those notifications out to landowners right now. They'll basically get this map right here, and whatever quadrant they're in, they'll get a zoomed out version and then a zoomed in version of their specific property, and any changes proposed and existing, right? And then I think once that becomes adopted official mapping, and we'll distribute that more readily there.
I guess my second question is, was there any deviation in the mapping for having the dam in or having the dam out?
So that's another thing that can be explored now that we have this. We have, the Great DEM is kind of the main product there, and the consultant, they have the capabilities with their modeling. They can remove that dam from the DEM and explore what kind of happens. I think mostly it would be honestly, it'd be Lower Town that would be impacted the most. So they can look at it how it is existing with the dam removed, with the dam in place, with more boards up. They can really kind of play with it however they want.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Trev.
Jeff, the points that you checked for elevation, are those the elevations at which the ground is at now, or was that the elevation of which it would be safe under a flood
So
event?
You're talking about the benchmarks?
The
there?
benchmark of elevations,
So
what were those, like, are they benchmarking where the land is today, or
Yeah, those
they?
are all existing elevations. So it's literally like a brass plug, typically at bridges or sidewalks. And so they're all exactly where it is right now. But we can use that to say, we have the model, we can say, all right, we know at this region, it's about 3 meters above that point. So that's what we're gonna use as the tool to kind of communicate that elevation.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through you, Reeve. Jeff, is it advisable to know where all the squeeze points are?
Squeeze points in terms of flow or?
Yes, that would limit flow in case of the
Yeah.
hazel, natural ones.
Yeah, so there was a lot of extra work that went into manual surveys, myself included. We, the consultant would basically identify constriction points being culverts, bridges, things of that sort. And extra survey work went into to capture those. So you'll see a lot of backwater at roads, bridges, smaller culverts, things of that sort. The dam being another. So that all went into account for that project there.
Yeah. So if we can eliminate squeeze points, the best.
Yeah, I guess
The best.
in the future, if you can widen a bridge, for example, right? Again, they have the model and the data to kind of tweak that and see what happens.
Mhm.
So they can explore all different futuristic options, I guess, if
Yeah.
that's what you mean.
And for all the homes that situate within the floodplain, how does that work for you or for us, for liability? Should we have a catalog of them, or does it matter, because it's already a done deal, or what do we look at?
So I guess from a regulation standpoint, it's our job to make sure development doesn't continue in those hazard areas. And if they do, they're at a high enough elevation where nothing's impacted, right? I think, and I'm more involved in, I guess, the technical component than the regulation side of things, but I know if it's existing, there's certain rules whether or not it can be replaced if it's destroyed, say, in a flood or a fire. And if, say someone does want to rebuild, yeah, they need to meet those flooding elevations, whether it's wet proofing or things of that sort. I guess the other point to make is we have better, we'll call it progression mapping, so we can see as, say Hazel were to hit, we would see the timing from, hour 1 to hour 12, and we would know, we could identify which houses would be impacted first, right? So order of evacuations, things of that sort.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that answer your question, I hope?
Kind of, yeah.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Jeff, the other question I have is that at the public meeting, will the full extent of the report indicating those closer views of all of those sections be included in the report for everybody to know, or only the landowners affected by those areas, are they only going to see those?
I think anybody within the floodplain right now, they'll be notified, and they'll be given that zoomed in portion specific to their property. So we'll be sending those out via hard copy.
What I'm talking about, Jeff, is a municipality. Like, as a municipality, are we going to see, like, all of it?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely, yeah.
everyone?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just not the home, like, not just the properties that are included, that we would see the full intensive of the report that would say like I said, what Councillor Faulkner was asked for, where the water's gonna go.
The complete extent, yeah.
Complete extent of what it's gonna look like, so that we can make assessments of what we need to do from a regulation
Sure.
perspective.
And typically, yeah, we can provide that. I think it's usually, the 5 return year event, so the 5-year event, 10, 25, 50, 100, and then typically that's the regional, so Hazel. So we can customize that as well, right? Anything in between. And I think the way that we've typically communicated that is through a computer with GIS. It's just a matter of turning on and off certain layers, right? So we can zoom in on certain properties or areas, whatever it may be. Because it's a lot of information just to view on one page, right?
Absolutely.
So Jeff, if I could ask you a question, say hypothetical, some big company came along and they wanted to build on the far side of Amberley Road, in the East Huron section, and I'm not sure what it's even zoned at. I'm gonna presume it's floodplain right now. And they wanted to build that up. Would something like this be used to show where the water would be displaced to, and then the problems that would happen as an argument not to allow that, or to help go around that?
Yeah, I think all the information would be readily available. They might need more consultant input in order to model that and say, they have a specific site plan, and again, they could kind of apply that to the digital terrain model. Say they're building up, 3 feet above grade or something like that, and then rerun the hydrology, and then see where that water backs up to, who's impacted, things of that sort. So all the information will be there to do an assessment like that.
Cool. Yeah, because I could see that happening one day. Any other questions for Jeff? Seeing none. Jeffrey, thank you very kindly. We do appreciate it. 6.2, Dietrich Engineering. Presentation of the engineer's report for the Rental Municipal Drain 2020. Bill, would you come up and explain this to us?
Sure. I think all our drainage reports have been circulated to all the landowners on the drain. I believe members of council have a copy as well. Electronic copy was sent. I don't know if we want to put up maybe a copy of the plan up on the screen, if that's possible. And then I'll just okay, that'll be good. That's basically I'll make my presentation off the plan. Basically, that's okay. Thanks, Carson. Reed Bailey, members of council, landowners on the Rintoul Municipal Drain. The purpose of this meeting this evening is to consider our drainage report that we've prepared, or Dietrich Engineering Limited has prepared, for some improvements under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. This is an existing drainage system, and it was originally constructed under the Drainage Act by a report that was prepared excuse me, by Gansby and Maneral, and it was dated December the 5th, 1968. In that report, the main drain was constructed or reconstructed, and also there was 11 towel branches included in that, as part of this that project back in 1968. We held the township has received a request for some improvements to the drainage system. An on-site meeting was held to determine what sections of the drain needed improvements, and from that site meeting, we prepared or did the field surveys and prepared this drainage report. We've also had an information meeting to review our findings with all the landowners. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time this evening going over the details of this project, but I will quickly summarize the work that is being proposed here. So you'll see on this drawing here, basically municipal drains are user pay systems. So all the lands and the roads within the catchment area or the watershed boundary are accessible for any improvements or changes to the existing drainage system. So on that plan, you'll see there's a blue dotted line around the outside. That light blue line is the watershed boundary for this drainage system. There's approximately 360 hectares of land that drain into the Rintoul Municipal Drain, which is about 890 acres. What's being proposed here is some improvements to the outlet, which is the main drain. And the main drain will consist of 1,008 meters of open ditch excavation. We're also proposing to install one new culvert in the open drain, and it'll be a 1,600 millimeter diameter pipe to replace the existing culvert on the Beeman and Hertzler property line. And that is shown on the drawing and also on the profile. The purple line on that on the plan shows the location of the open ditch, and that the section that's colored in purple, all of the sections of the open portion that will be having work done on it. So those sections will be cleaned out as part of this project. We've estimated the work for the open portion of this project, including the installation of this culvert, at $50,500. Now there is a breakdown of those costs in the report. I won't go through all the breakdown of the estimate, but the estimate on the main drain as well as the rest of this project includes the estimated construction costs, allowances that'll be provided to the landowners under Section 30 of the Drainage Act for any damages to lands and crops. It also provides access and right of way to allow the contractor to come in and do the work on this drain. It also included is the administration costs the township incurs to have these projects go to completion. So the open portion is the main outlet for the whole of all these tile drains. There's also a small open ditch that's going to be cleaned out, which is the A drain open, which is the green line shown on the plan, and we've estimated that to cost $10,000. And there's a breakdown of the cost in the drainage report as well for that. The other parts of the project include the replacement and upgrading of the various tile systems. The A-drain, which is the orange line on the drawing, is being proposed to be replaced. It'll consist of 1,540 meters of new pipe system. It's a 300 millimeter tile at the upper end of the drain that's being proposed, and 675 millimeter tile where it outlets back into the open ditch at the outlet. The estimated cost for this includes a new road crossing under the county road as well. Is estimated $282,000. The next part, there's three other tile drains that are being replaced as well. The yellow line is known in the old drain report as F drain. It'll consist of 1,128 meters of new 250 millimeter tile to 600 millimeter tile. It drains approximately an area of, I believe, around 81.4 hectares or 201 acres of land. And we've estimated the cost of the work on F drain at $231,300. There's two small tile branches as well. J drain, which is 63 meters of 6-inch or 150 millimeter high density polyethylene pipe, will be installed there to replace the old drain, estimated at $12,200. And the last part of the project, which is the drain K, and it'll consist of 166 meters of 250 millimeter tile. That sort of gives you a quick overview of the sections of the drainage system that's being upgraded. In the report itself, you'll see there's a breakdown of the construction costs and the assessment of these costs. This evening, basically, the purpose of this meeting is just to review the work that's being proposed. There will be another meeting set up in approximately a month in March to review or deal with any appeals on assessment of costs. So at this point in time, I'll turn the meeting over to the members of council and any landowners on the drain. If you've got any questions regarding the work that's being proposed, I'll try and answer those.
council, any questions? Seeing none? Oh, Paul.
Yes, through you, Reeve. The K drain, was it 231,000 for the complete, the yellow drain there? That
Okay,
or you had it broken down as something, 12,200. I couldn't keep up with it.
oh, okay, yes, the yellow drain, which is, that's the actual F, that's the F
Mhm.
drain.
Yes,
And that's the F drain was $231,300.
okay.
And the K drain is that turquoise drain or whatever. It goes over and there's a new road crossing under the county road. So it outlets into the F drain and it'll be replaced as well. And it's estimated at $55,700, including the county road crossing.
Good.
Anyone else? Seeing none from the council, from the audience on this part of the council meeting. Is there any questions or comments, concerns you would like to, Bill to address? I'm not seeing any. Okay. Chris, did you have another question?
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Beyond the, at the end of what we call the rental drain, there, the purple, is everything satisfactory?
Yeah, at this point in time, we didn't feel there was a need to do any further improvements to the open ditch. We would have sufficient outlet. As we've surveyed it downstream further, but at this point, there's no need to go have any work done on that section of the ditch. If there is any in the future, it can be done under the township's maintenance program. Through the drainage from town.
Are there municipal drain, is it municipal beyond?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. It goes through the next farm, through roll number 12-032. So I believe it's municipal down to the St. Augustine line there.
Okay.
In the gallery there, did you folks have some concerns? Do you have some concerns you'd like to address, sir? No, feel free to speak up. Now is the time.
No, we're okay.
Now is the time. Seeing none. Yeah, I'm gonna read the motion. The Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopt the engineer's report for the rental municipal drain 2020 as presented by Dietrich Engineering Limited, and further that the council provisionally adopt the first and second reading of the bylaw number 19-2020. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Rick seconding. Last chance for questions or comments, council? Seeing none, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Easy one for you.
Thank you very much. No. So just kind of the next steps on the project then. I'll just kind of
Sure.
give everybody a little bit of an update. There will be later on this evening, the council will be giving the bylaw first and second reading. It's a provisional bylaw still at this point. It'll be mailed out to all the landowners along with the notice for what's called the quarter revision. And I believe we got a date set for March the 20th for
March
that.
20th at 10 a.m. in the council
Okay.
chambers.
So, and that only deals with now, the project will proceed as far as whatever's being planned in the report. That'll eventually, we'll be preparing the contract documents. They'll go to the various different contractors, and at this point in time, this is just an estimate of what the costs are. So we'll be, the project will be tendered out, and we'll have probably some costs in for that meeting after quarter revision. And after the appeal periods are up, the municipality then can give the bylaw third reading and award the contract. So with, depending on, we're probably looking at construction to take place sometime this year, depending on, we'll find out better, we'll know better once the contract's let. So that's kind of some of the next steps in the process.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Moving along, we have reports. 7.1.1, clerk's report. I'm gonna read it first. So 7.1.1 is that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the clerk dated February 18th, 2020 regarding the taxi rate for long-distance trips for information purposes. And further, the council approves the implementation of the taxi rate of $1.70 per long-distance trips of 30 kilometers or more. And further, the council deems the adoption of the bylaw number 20-2020 being an updated taxi bylaw to be a time-sensitive matter and approve an exception to the section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw number 20-2020 to be passed at the February 18th, 2020 regular council meeting. I'm gonna let Carson speak to that before I ask for a mover.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on the December 2nd, 2019 council meeting, council considered a report and a draft bylaw which proposed numerous changes to the previous taxi bylaw, which was originally adopted in 2009. And these changes were adopted in a new bylaw, which is bylaw 116-2019 at the December 16th meeting. So bylaw 116-2019 has been in effect now for approximately 2 months, and we've received feedback from both the taxi companies, and this has been positive. Both the companies have found our process is much easier to navigate, and there's been increased clarity in the process. Additionally, both companies remain in favor of the tariff of charges that was implemented and are overall satisfied with the bylaw. There has been one specific concern that was basically a learning curve of this update, and basically this concern is with how both companies are handling transportation of passengers for long distance trips. So this is for trips, whether it's to Goderich or Stratford, where they're picking someone up here and taking them somewhere for a medical appointment or something along those lines. And basically, in the past, both municipalities have been, or both taxi companies have been handling it differently. And so now, with this new bylaw, this was not something that was included. And so currently the rate for long distance trips is the same as any trip around here, a short trip at $2 a kilometer, which both companies have expressed that they found this high. So staff researched how this issue has been addressed in other municipalities, and based on the research of municipalities who have taxis that don't require meters in their taxi cabs, basically this has usually been handled through a rate for long distance trips specifically that is added in your tariff of charges. And so, for example, the municipality of West Perth, who is probably North Huron's greatest comparator, they've implemented a long distance rate of $1.70 per kilometer. So further to this research, staff reached out to both taxi companies, and both companies confirmed in writing that they were in favor of a long distance rate for a reduced rate for long distance trips. And so when we asked, as you'll see in the report, one company was in favor of $1.60 for trips 20 kilometers and over, and one was in favor of $1.80 per 40 kilometers and over. So based on this information, staff are recommending that a reduced rate of $1.70 for long distance trips of 30 kilometers or more be added to Schedule B of the taxi bylaw, which is the tariff of charges. And basically the approach that we took with this recommendation is that it finds the middle ground between the recommendations of the two companies, and as well as in line with the municipality of West Perth's reduced rate for long distance trips.
Thank you, Carson. Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder. Chris? Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. 7.1.2, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the clerk dated February 18th, 2020 regarding the sale and disposal of land policy update for information purposes. And further, that the council direct the clerk to finalize and bring forward a bylaw to repeal and replace the sale and disposal of land policy for the council's consideration at the March 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting. Carson, speak to that first before I ask for a mover. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as outlined in the staff report, North Huron's current policy regarding the disposition of land was enacted under bylaw 25/2008, which is also attached to the report. And as council will see, it's in need of an update. Currently, the bylaw lacks legislative underpinning, as the relevant sections of the act, which would be section 270, is not referenced in the bylaw, and the current bylaw was adopted in bylaw format when the municipal act calls that it be adopted as a policy. So staff have reviewed numerous policies of other municipalities that are in line with the legislation, and it's apparent that there are much more efficient and transparent methods and processes that can be used that are currently not available to North Huron. So considering the fact that action item 4.5 of North Huron's strategic plan is to determine the next steps related to surplus municipal infrastructure and assets, staff found it prudent to develop an updated policy that will allow this action item to be completed in a more efficient and transparent way. So staff are proposing that the updated policy, which is attached to the report, be adopted by council. And basically this policy accomplishes three things. The first one is it creates greater clarity in the processes by outlining a step-by-step procedure that can be easily followed by the township regardless of whether the disposal proceedings were commenced by an individual or by the township. The second thing it does, it creates exemptions for certain requirements. So in North Huron's current bylaw, as council will be aware with the process that was undertaken for the Blythe lawn tennis property, not every step that was outlined was applicable to that situation. So what we've done in this update is we've created exemptions that can apply so that the bylaw or the policy has a bit of flexibility and creates efficiency in the processes. And then the third one is just updates to definitions and technical changes. So as I mentioned previously, the bylaw was not adopted under section 270 of the Municipal Act, and so we've added a short title to the policy. We've added definitions. All these things help increase clarity and transparency for the public.
Do I have a mover? I have Anita. I have Trevor seconding. Questions, comments, concerns from the council?
Long overdue.
Seeing none, hearing none, I call the motion. All in favor, carries. On to finance now, 7.2.1. This is with Donna. Yeah, I'm gonna let Donna speak to this one first, because there's a little...
Yeah, thank you, Reed. So as part of our year-end procedures and getting ready for the year-end audit, which starts on Monday, we look at the year-end balances to determine if there's any potential to transfer funds to reserves. So I've divided this into different categories, and the first one is additional revenues. So we really can't predict during budget time what additional revenues we might realize by the end of the year. So just to go through those quickly, we did receive cannabis funding in the amount of $10,000 in the form of the grant from the ministry. I believe that Trevor and Carson are working on some ideas on the best use for those cannabis funds. The EST sale proceeds, this is not actually additional revenue. It's the money, as you know, we sold the EST Center in January of 2019, and the construction's been underway, and so we have $198,036 from the sale proceeds that will be moved forward to 2020 and used to continue and complete the project. As part of that same exercise, because we had the funds for the greater part of the year, I calculated the interest that we would earn on those sale proceeds and subtracted off as we made payments to the contractors. So we currently are earning 2.25% on that, and so it would be $39,274 that I'm suggesting that we move forward and use to offset the cost to complete the project in 2020. Also, as you know, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about your modernization funding. It was money that was received in 2019, and so as well, it earned interest of about $11,970. So again, I'm suggesting that we move it forward along with whatever you do with the grant money. You would just have that extra money to work into that scenario. Building department, you heard from Kirk this year, so he had a small surplus. It's a legislative requirement that we transfer that to reserve. Animal control also, as you know, we're already underway with the dog counter for 2020. Out at the landfill, we had increased tipping fees, which is good news. We don't know that when we're budgeting, and so we would like to recommend that we use that, as you know, to offset the unexpected compactor purchase that we had this year. The aggregate resources at year end, we normally receive our share of the license fees throughout the year, and so we're recommending that that be put forward, and we keep a gravel pit rehabilitation reserve, and so we would like to add to that. As Marty talked to you about his budget, North Huron and each of the partners paid for their fire calls. For this year, we were underspent. Some of the other municipalities, as you know, were overspent. So our idea is to establish a fire call reserve so that if we run into a year where our calls are higher than budget, then we have a bit of money to deal with that. And also at year end, through WSIB, we've received a program refund through the NEAR program. So we're recommending that that go forward into reserves as well. Also, a side note, which the Reeve is referring to, is I was speaking with the manager of daycare today, and she received $5,000 in additional grant from the county, so she would like to add that to the list and carry that forward as well. So that's that portion under the revenue. Under the expense portion, for council training, as you know, we're tracking how much you folks are spending on conferences and carrying it forward with you. So you may use it in the next year. So this is the combined total for council, and Mandy has a sheet prepared on how much each of you have left. So I don't know if she's distributed that to you or not, but if not, we'll make sure that you get that so each of you can see what you have left over from this year. For asset management, we have a number of asset management projects underway, and we have $6,700 left from last year that we would like to move forward. You've heard about a big drain project tonight. I'm not sure just how much North Huron's going to be assessed into that, if any. But we did budget for substantial drain projects in 2019, and they didn't go ahead, so we want to make sure we put that money forward. In Public Works, throughout all the sections in Public Works, they were underspent about $50,000 for various things. We want to move that forward into equipment reserve. And the same thing for the waste department. We were underspent in operations. Mainly the annual operating cost was about the biggest variance there. And again, due to the compactor purchase, we would like to move that forward. Pretty well everything there. The rest of the list is fairly small amounts. It's, as I said, underspent in operations. You just never know until year end whether, again, depending on weather and such and where the staff are actually working, how your each department's going to come in. So there's a listing there of funds we'd like to move forward. For some of the big asset management projects we have to undertake over the next couple of years, especially, as you know, the complex is an aging facility, and we've got some problems with humidity and equipment and a number of things. So we would like to move those funds forward. At the bottom, I'd just like to speak for a minute on the Wingham Police. So we were fortunate in that on the contract, we were underspent from what the OPP billed us at about $58,000, which was good news. So some of that was due to positions not being filled for the whole length of the contract, such as the admin support. And Dwayne has spoken with the OPP just to make sure that we aren't still going to get a bill for anything. And the other piece of that was capital. So as you know, in the 2019 budget, we budgeted for about $244,000 in capital. And the biggest part of that was for what they call a beat radio system, and so we've confirmed that they're not going to implement that system, and so we don't have to pay for that as well. So on those, on the OPP contract for Wingham, then we have we're underspent by $120,000, and I think you're probably aware that though for 2020 the cost went up $60,000 on the contract. So what I'm recommending here and for version 2 of the budget is that we take 60 of this amount to offset the increase for 2020 budget and keep 60 because in theory then we still have the contract for 2021 and if it went up 60,000 in 2020 it's quite likely to go up there again. Now Dwayne and Carson and I believe Rick are going to a meeting tomorrow on OPP, so there might be some revelations come out of those meetings as well as they carry forward to see what's going to happen with policing. The second piece of that then is still with the Wingham Police. We had budgeted for some sale of equipment. We got a lot more money in on the sales than what we had thought, which was great. Under the building expenses, the heat and hydro and such, we were underspent by about 5,000 there. And also on the communications system, we were underspent about 6,500 there. So in total, with the other things underspent, we have about $44,000 there. So the one thing I'm asking if council would consider is, as you know, we pretty much depleted our Westerio reserves last year. That's where most of this money came from in order to be able to offset all the severance costs and all the additional pension costs and such. So just one suggestion I have is possibly put it back into the Westerio reserve, and then before the contract ends, if something else comes up, we can get it back out. So I'm just looking for a comment there. So that's a total of transfers to reserves. We're going to be talking about a couple of individual items on Thursday at the budget meeting, but in order to facilitate the audit for next week, I need to get this first round dealt with. So does anyone have any questions on this listing?
Go ahead, Anita.
For the listings, the smaller amounts in the bottom, like say
The hall.
the hall, and
Yeah.
you want to move something for beautification or something like that. Is that something that we really have to use for beautification, or can we say no, we don't want it, we want it to have it forwards to sidewalks in white or something like that? Does
Yeah.
it have to stay there, or can we move it around?
Yeah, you can move it around. The main thing that we want to do is to be able to at least get it into reserves.
Yeah.
And then if we have it, you're not pigeonholed. These are suggestions that the staff are making about arena refrigeration and some of the aquatic upgrades and some of those sorts of things. But all it would take in the future is a council motion to look at some of these things and
Spend it differently.
if you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Donna, could I ask you,
Yes.
sorry, Chris, did you want
No, sorry, I'm just hanging out.
when it comes to the Westerio, which is, I'm not sure if all the councilors know how that works. That's a Wingham only thing because we didn't sell our PUC. Blythe did sell theirs, and of course, East Wabanach has Ontario Hydro. Keeping that money aside in that Westerio, there's really nothing for us to use it for now, because with the police gone, aren't we all kind of like, except for maybe the lighting, all one big family now? Like, there's no really thing you could say in Wingham that would, we have to keep that for Wingham.
No, there isn't anything forcing the separation of those funds, but however, having just been through the whole policing issue, which we wouldn't have known had we not been saving that money up, because we took $470-some thousand out of the Westerio Reserve this year. So it was luck that we had been setting that aside to be used for an Wingham an expense. But for the future expenses, today I don't know of one in particular, but that's not to say that something, couldn't come along. There isn't very much left in there now. I think there's only about $26,000 is all that's left now. The previous, I don't know if you were on council with I don't think the last time. So we saved it up the last time and used it to pay the complex off. So those were the two big projects or two big situations with we have used that money to good cause to be able to save the taxpayers some money on that. But yes, on a go forward basis, there would certainly be no reason why you couldn't have discussions on what you wanted to do with that money as a group. There's no fast law, if you will, that it has to be kept separate from Wingham. It's just been the best practice.
I'm wondering, following up on what Anita said then, is if we shouldn't have a separate meeting sometime and look at all these bundles of money that are kind of flying all over and see if we can start targeting towards asset management or dedicating them to, because there's a lot of them I think are just floating around. So that would be a separate meeting on its own, but I think it's one this council should be having to, especially with the OPP coming into the Wingham ward. I think it's a situation where we should be taking a good solid look at being more of, I know we're a community of communities, but more of a community from a financial point of view. So we'll have that discussion another day, but if you could just put that on your radar, I think we should have that meeting sometime.
Yes, so just to further that, so as part of your year end, once we get through the audit and that, I do present you with the listing of all your reserves, and we have that at a meeting where we discuss that. Further to that, I've had discussion with the department heads, and as you say, you know, we've been saving $5,000 for this or that. So I've had the discussions with the department heads, and due to the needs of asset management, what we want to do as a group is to take a look at those reserves and determine how much can go as an equipment reserve, how much is capital construction reserves and those types of things. Instead of, right now, we have it like, you know, so much for the Olympia and so, you know, like that. So as I said, we've had these discussions, actually Vicki and I had quite a discussion about it today, I guess. So it is definitely something that as department heads we are planning to work on as well.
That's great, thank you. Yes, I'm gonna get Carson to read the amended motion. Oh, sorry, Trevor, sorry.
No, I think, ultimately, I think that, I know that discussion, that report comes like on a Friday, we have the meeting on the Monday, or whatever the case may be. My suggestion, only because I think it's gonna be more of a discussion about the length of amounts and what they all are, is the sooner we get that report, even if it's a draft report about what is in reserves today, council's members can make notes about where they think the priority needs to be, and then when we get to the meeting that we need to talk about, we can actually have constructive discussion as opposed to, well, what is this? And then we spend 2 hours trying to figure out what it is and not really talking about where it should go. And then at least council can get informed on what, be asking staff, what is this? Before we get to that meeting, and then we can have a real constructive conversation about, you know, maybe let's bundle all this money because it's doing this and this and this. So I think, you know, for me, it's more of, let's be proactive about the discussion and informative for council purposes, so that when we have these meetings, we could be constructive as opposed to trying to remember what the information is, and then we take another meeting to try to figure out where the money needs to go. That was only my comment. The only other comment that I had was, I don't think we want, I just don't think we want to do anything yet until we are out of this contract with the OPP. I completely agree with the West Area discussion, keeping it separate, at least until we're outside of this and then we're in the billing model. If then we're in the billing model, the chips fall where they may, the calculation's the same for us as it is for Blythe, it is for whoever. You know, I just, if we come into consideration about whatever this looks like going forward, that currently right now is a Wingham cost. So to take that 47,000 or whatever, and we took 400 and something out of it to use for Wingham, if we put 40 back in, the Wingham ratepayers should have the benefit of those when we're going to get to the point where we have no idea what it's going to be in 3.5 years, because you know that $60,000 adjustment that they made next year was for a contract negotiation they just made. So that's a 3-year conversation. So right by the time the end of this contract we could be up for another adjustment based on their negotiations with their collective bargaining. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, I think it would be best, at least in our best interest from that we've taken that money out of West Aerial to pay for these one-time costs of the area rated issue. The Wingham ratepayers should be saving that, any savings they can get, at least until this contract is gone by the wayside, in my opinion.
Very good points, very good points. Okay.
So the amended motion is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the Director of Finance dated February 18th, 2020 for information purposes, and further that Council authorizes the Director of Finance to proceed with the 2019 transfers to reserves as per the attached listing, and further that Council authorizes the Director of Finance to proceed to transfer $5,000 to daycare reserves for additional funding received in 2019.
Do I have a mover?
I'll move-
Trevor, I have Paul seconding. Questions, comments, last chance. Seeing none, all in favor? Passes. 7.3.1, Wingham Trailer Park. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Recreation and Communication Services dated February 18th, 2020 regarding the future of the Wingham Trailer Park, and further that the council authorize staff to undertake a Phase 1 and Phase 2 site condition plan with the upset limit of $35,000, and further that the Director of Finance be directed to amend the draft 2020 budget to include $35,000 for the Phase 1 and 2 site condition plan, and further that the staff be directed to notify the Wingham Legion and the interested purchaser of the council's direction to staff. Yes, so we're gonna let Vicky and Denise speak to this, and we may wanna change that or just vote that one down or up. I wasn't swaying anybody. You guys are up.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you may recall, in July of last year, staff presented a report to council regarding the future of the Wingham Trailer Park and the renewal of the operating agreement. The report provided background information on the operation of the trailer park, some of the history and interest of council, council basically previously being interested in disposing of the property and some of the things that had occurred. It also provided an overview of the current operating agreement. The report discussed current housing shortage in North Huron as well as in Huron County and provided several options for council to consider when making a decision on the future of the trailer park. These options included the continued operation of the facility status quo through an operating agreement with the Wingham Legion, or it could be another community organization. Selling the property as a trailer park so they could be run privately. Selling the property to a developer for the development of year-round residential use. And the township possibly developing the property for residential use. Council directed staff to look into the sale and or development options further and to report back. Prior to the end of the year, the township did renew the operating agreement with the Legion for a period of 1 year, just to allow more time for additional information to be compiled and presented. Council also committed to make a decision relative to the renewal of the trailer park operating agreement prior to August 1st of 2020. The report that's before you tonight basically provides the additional information that was requested by council. Council had, through their discussions in July, had requested information relative to the number of housing units, as well as cost estimates associated with developing the site, and potentially what tax revenue could be generated if it was developed for residential purposes. The report further indicated that staff were to determine the location of the sanitary service line. We are pleased to basically confirm that that location has been confirmed and it is not through the middle of the trailer park as we had anticipated and things. The sanitary service line is actually located on the easement that's between the trailer park and the Legion itself. Attached to the report is a site analysis report undertaken by the Huron County Planning and Development Department. The site analysis report provides some history on the former use of the site,
They were able to discover that the trailer park property was once part of the Toronto Grey Bruce Railway. As such, they have indicated a site condition assessment would be necessary should council wish to further explore the development of the property for residential use. The report also depicts various types of potential housing units or residential use for this that could be accommodated on the site. And with us tonight, we have Denise Van Amersfoort. Did I get that right, Denise? Yes. She's the senior planner with the Huron County Planning Development Department. And Denise shortly will be presenting her report relative to the development of the site. Based on the information provided in the planning report and some investigation relative to home values, existing home values in Wingham, staff were able to prepare what we're calling guesstimates, because it's all based on numbers and values that we cannot come up with. Impact has to assess the homes and come up with their values, but for the purpose of this, for this evening, staff were able to generate some guesstimates for potential tax revenue based on the type of developments Denise identified in her report. The actual, just further, the actual amount of tax revenue would be realized depends on kind of, you know, the homes, the assessed value from impact, and I believe also Donna may help me with this, the type of home, like whether it's single versus multi-residential, or if we're talking apartment buildings. So a lot of it is just kind of hypothetical here, but it is numbers to give council some kind of idea of what could occur on that site. Based on all the information compiled, you know, it's staff's opinion that the best option for this site and what would be the most beneficial would to develop it, be that we develop it for permanent year-round housing. If developed for permanent year-round housing, the township would be taking a proactive step in trying to address the housing issue, but also it would support the economic growth that in the community and help our employers who are struggling right now with attracting a workforce, because no one wants to come here because there's nowhere for them to live. But it'd also be generating new tax dollars for the municipality, which would help to offset our costs for services that we currently have. Staff are recommending that the township undertake a phase 1 and phase 2 site condition assessment in 2020. That would require us to amend the 2020 draft budget. So,
Thank you,
with this evening, then we have Denise to go over her report.
Sure, Denise. Your turn, Denise.
Thank you. So as Vicky alluded to, I was brought on more to do a high-level assessment of what would be kind of a highest and best use analysis for the subject property. So I'm sure council is very familiar with the property. It is 2.8 acres and change. Located, it's a through property, so it's unique in that it fronts onto both Victoria Street West as well as John Street West. Of the 2.85 acres, approximately a third of an acre is within the hazard land or floodplain of the Maitland River, and so 2.5 acres is really what I would consider to be developable for this property. When we look at surrounding land uses, I mean, certainly we have a bit of a mixed use in this area. We have our branch of the Royal Canadian Legion immediately abutting the property to the east. We also have some other community facility uses to the north, both the community living and the children's center being there. A number of park uses, so the splash pad and the recreational property directly to the north, but also the Wingham Community Trail abuts this property on the sort of the north and the west side, so really significant from a recreational perspective. As well in the area, we certainly have some low density residential uses which exist today, and so we want to take all that in consideration when we're thinking about what would be a possible future use. I also took the opportunity to look across the river into Morris Turnberry to see what the lands were designated on their side, and they are floodplains. So not so much of a concern in terms of compatibility, in terms of, you know, let's say there was a larger industry on the other side that would potentially have impacts. It certainly wouldn't be at this distance, so not a concern there. So in determining, you know, so what would be possible uses for this property? What might be the highest and best use? The place I started is the past. And so what you'll see here in 1879, this is the town of Wingham excerpt of the County of Huron Atlas. You'll see at the end of John Street, it was anticipated at that time that this property would be subdivided out into 8 lots and would be developed for residential purposes. Now that didn't come to pass because in 1887, the Toronto Grey Bruce Railway Company purchased the property. And they retained the ownership until May of 1959 when it was purchased back by the corporation of the town of Wingham. So the railway owned the property for approximately 75 years, and during that time, it became part of the rich railway history that Wingham has. So I'm sure many of you will know this better than I, but this is an excerpt from a 1937 Department of National Defense topographic map. It shows Wingham, had many junctions, many switches in the Wingham area, and as we look to the subject property there, right at the end of John Street, you'll note there's a WT, which I believe stands for water tower, which is a circle. And if you follow the line right to the east of that circle and to the south, then you're on the subject property. I think, oh, I do have a white outline there, just not showing up well. So this line ran north-south, and this is actually the southern terminus of this north line. So if you started at the subject property and headed north, you're essentially following the Wingham Community Trail under the bridge and heading out to the north. Now when you get northeast of town, you could either carry on to Roxeter or you could take the switch and head on up to Teeswater. So it's interesting from a historical perspective. I mean, why was there a spur that would come all the way down to this subject property? My best guess is that if you see the large black rectangular to the property to the north, from a review of different properties maps, it would appear that these large rectangles tend to indicate industries. And so it's possible that that was the reason, that there was an industry and that was the reason to bring the spur through. There's no suggestion that at the end of the line that there was a turntable, there wasn't a roundhouse. We don't believe that there was any like potential servicing of the cars when they reached this terminus, but it is possible. And so that is what an environmental site assessment would help us to understand. First is a phase 1, it's more of a desktop exercise, and phase 2, they'd actually be going out and doing some boreholes to see what is the environmental state of this property. Is there contamination? Would remediation be required? And all of that information is really prudent for council's consideration before we go on really to any further next steps. It's kind of a step-by-step case, and that's really where my recommendation would land, but I will walk through the rest of it for interest's sake. So the Wingham Community Trail currently traverses through this property. Now I'm not sure how accurate this is in terms of, it appears to me that people do walk sort of to the rear of the residences along Victoria Street and come out on the municipal lands to actually meet Victoria Street and then across and around. In any event, what we'd want to ensure is that should this property be redeveloped, ideally council would retain ownership, the township would retain ownership of that northwest corner. You would control the floodplain and you would control the trail connection. We don't want to see it going into someone's private hands who may not have the same value on that recreational asset as the municipality would. So that's really the main point of this slide, is to ensure that that corner of the property is retained by the township. Now in terms of the conceptual designs, I'll walk through what each of the pictures are and maybe some of the pros and cons. So for the first photo, so the top left, I took a look at the zoning bylaw and picked what would be the smallest lot that would be permitted for a single detached. And I plotted that out with a 66-foot full municipal road allowance running from Victoria Street to John Street. And as you'll note, the road really, it chews up a lot of real estate, if I can put it that way. Also, you have a public works building at the end of John Street that likely, well, it would have to come out. and you're not reaching much density. And so it really, to me, at quick glance, it said this is not going to be generating the highest and best use for the municipality. On the top right, I did a multiple attached. So if these were all in blocks of multiple attached units, maybe 6 units each, and we ran across, or I think I did some 4s on the north side there, what would this generate? And again, even with some bank of parking, you see that road again just does not lead to an efficient use of land. And so I sort of abandoned the concept of a straight through road and thought, what if this was sort of an internal drive, and looked at some different concepts. So on the bottom left, this would be a series of buildings, whether they be multiple attached or stacked townhouse. So multiple attached are buildings all connected side by side. They may be 2 stories. A stacked townhouse is where we actually have a series of units attached on the bottom and then a series of units attached across the top. And so this is a concept, I've seen it in different communities across Huron. It's starting to be proposed. We don't have as many built examples, but it's certainly a way of achieving a higher density on sites such as this. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. The last piece was just to show if you wanted to do something bigger. I mean, this is a huge building envelope. Obviously, an apartment building wouldn't take up all of that space. You could do 2 apartment buildings potentially. I think you really do want to be sensitive to the low density residential that you have. And it's to the west and the east. This property, the way I've got the screen oriented, it looks to your north and your south. But I think that there's a way to do that, to be to both achieve density on this property and to be sensitive to the fact that we do have some lower density residential in proximity. So I think we can do both. Here's an example, and now this is 2.2 acres in Goderich. There's 32 residential units. And so you'll see here, these are attached units. They are 2 stories. They are, a lot of the 4 units we see being built in communities like Wingham tend to be single story because they're catering to seniors. But what we know from our labor shortage is that a number of the folks that would be potential employees have families, and so they need more bedrooms. So the single story units don't potentially meet the family need as well, which is why there's an opportunity within these to do 2 stories. And so that's just one example. Another one I thought I'd bring you is from Exeter. This was recently approved by the municipality of South Huron, and it's for a property. It's only 1.5 acres. They're achieving 34 units, and there's 3 separate buildings. So you'll notice the largest building is along the southern boundary, and then there's 2 smaller buildings. The access road is from your north coming down. You see 1 building on the left and 1 building on the right. So this is stacked townhouses, and I'm going to show you a picture of what that is. So this is our first proposal for a stacked townhouse in the county of Huron. And what you'll note is that there's a number of exterior doors. So when you go into those doors, you would either be walking into your unit at grade, or when you open the door, you would immediately see a staircase, and you'd walk straight upstairs and your unit's on the 2nd floor. Every unit has either a balcony or an at-grade patio. There's no common spaces. So that's the biggest difference from a traditional apartment. You know, you'd walk in, you'd have a foyer or a lobby, and then you'd have common hallways. The trouble developers are finding, I think there's lots of pieces to it, but those common areas have to be maintained, and they find this is just a way of avoiding that. It's also a bit more about, it allows for some more modern designs, I would say, potentially, with the built form itself. So it's certainly something that we're seeing more so in our urban counterparts. As I said, this is our first proposal for a stacked town in Huron County. I do think we will see more of this as time comes, and this certainly can be done more affordably than those single detached unit, even the multiple attached units. This can achieve higher density. So, before we get ahead of ourselves, I really do think it's prudent to pause to do the phase 1, phase 2 environmental. We know the history of the property, so let's get some facts about, what is the state of the property and go from there. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very kindly. Questions? Go for it, Kevin.
You haven't put you don't have an overview of what that stacked housing would look like on the 2 acres? Or you just the Exeter one?
I just have the extra one, so I didn't plot the buildings on this property, but for example, if you look at the bottom left, you could put 3 of those together essentially and do one long stacked townhouse that would maybe be a higher density up against the Legion, you know, and then if you wanted to, you could do ones that were maybe a bit more higher end that would face the river, have a really nice view of the river. It would be a way of creating a socioeconomic blend on the property. It's certainly not promoted from a housing standpoint to put all affordable housing on one property and then all high-end housing on another property. We really want to see that blend. It really leads to more complete communities. And so this is what I was sort of thinking about at the time, was how could we achieve that in a way that would lend to some maybe higher end units facing the river, and then again creating more of that density up against the Legion.
Questions, other questions?
Just property line value. Is there any property to the west beside the Legion that is, I'm just thinking of another way, another entrance in. Would there be room to have an entrance in at the side of the Legion?
There's a very narrow easement, and I believe that is the location of your sanitary line. It's possible, it would just be quite narrow, so possible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, with the 6 plots you have in the bottom left, did I understand in there that that's 24 places? You had
Yeah,
written in there?
yeah, for each, yep.
For each one? Like, I'm just
You
looking
could go to
at,
6 each, 36.
okay, I'm just looking at, we have a lot of older people in town that want a place to go when they sell their house. I'm just wondering, how does that play in having just single story? I take it you're pushing for double story places by the sound of.
That would be the idea, the stacked townhouse, go back, so it allows for an at-grade entrance. So that might be your at-grade units tend to be sized for seniors, and then you'd have your families upstairs on the 2nd floor.
Is that in the building process in Exeter that you've been talking about? Is that working in there?
We have a lot of discussion with the developer about who they thought their target market would be. Parking was discussed at length in that case. And all of those things play a factor, right? I mean, it depends on who your target demographic is. Will they be likely to have 1 car? Might they be likely to have 2? If it's truly affordable, in some cases these folks, they don't have a vehicle. In which case a reduction of parking may be very appropriate for this parcel.
Go ahead.
Through you, Reeve. Denise, oh dear. Okay, well, I'll go to the affordable housing. Can you define that? Like, we hear it a lot. Like, is it subsidized? What, could you please tell us?
So we have sort of 3 words going around in the county right now. So there's affordable, attainable, and market rent. And so if I think the word attainable is something that the county economic development is using a lot, and they're using the living wage. So I believe the living wage in Huron County right now is in and around 1856. 17. Okay, 755. Okay, lower than I thought. So that is what they're saying. Someone who makes $17.55 can afford this rent, not being more than 30% of their income. That's typically the benchmark that we have used for affordable, is that someone spends not more than 30% of their income on housing. So therefore, what's affordable for someone in one income bracket is very different than what's affordable for someone in another. There are some opportunities for subsidies within the county. Currently, the wait list is 400 households long.
So it's county money that subsidize
That's right.
these folks?
That's right.
Which is our money.
Yeah.
So we're subsidizing the housing.
So there's different ways. So market rent geared to income would be one option. They have different programs. They have a home ownership program, which I think helps someone maybe make a down payment initially. They do have different streams. There's an affordable housing project being built, affordable housing unit being built in Goderich right now. I believe it has 24 units in it, and that was as a result of pooling multiple years of funding to be able to put them together to do a build of that size. So there's not endless resources at county housing, is certainly the message that we're hearing, and the need is really great. So where a municipality owns a property like this and has an opportunity to potentially play a role in helping to bring about some more affordable housing, it's certainly something that we're encouraging municipalities to look at.
Okay, now I remember what I first wanted to ask you.
Sure.
So if we as a municipality develop it, then we decide exactly what we're doing, but if the property was sold to a developer, do you have any say, or?
Yes. So you would do an
Truly, do you have say? Because he would be the new owner, and he or she would have ideas.
Yes. So I can use an example from Goderich. So the Victoria Public School was a school that was closed as a result of Avon-Maitland District School Board's projections. And so the town of Goderich purchased that property, and after a period of years, they put it out through what's known as an expressions of interest process. And so they had they put it out, and they had set out their criteria. You know, we're interested in seeing these types of uses. If you're coming forward with a residential development, know that we want a set number of, like a minimum density requirement, so that the proposals you're getting back are generally the types of things that you're wanting to see. Of those proposals, Goderich was able to select a couple of them, and they actually wrote into the agreements of sale that if the property wasn't developed for the specific purchase within a given time period, they had to sell it back to the town. So there certainly are mechanisms that the municipality or the township can put into place to kind of help to guarantee a certain vision coming about on a property that you are divesting of.
Trevor?
Yes, just to, I have my question or comment, but just to follow up, that was, Chris, that was similar to the discussion that we had with the property of the Blythe Lawn and Tennis Group, where we had envisioned on saying it was going to be X, and the developer was going to be required to do that, and if he wasn't going, we weren't gonna sell it. So we can put requirements as to when we sell a piece of property, and if they don't wanna do it, then they would just come back to us as part of the agreement. If they choose not to do it that way, well, that's fine, we'll find somebody who will, because that's what we want. We own that piece of property. The other thing the one thing is, I love the information that we've got here tonight, and the reason why I say this is because for the past 5 years, we have been going on, I would say, hearsay information about the sanitary sewer, to be quite honest with you. Many years of them thinking, we can't develop this piece of property because the sanitary sewer runs right in the middle of it. So I think ultimately, you know, conceptual drawings and understanding about what we think could work, I think this is great information for council to take away. But ultimately, in my mind, the more information we have, when it comes to this phase 1 or phase 2, is really going to decide what the municipality is going to do. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the fact that the municipality owns it, we have the right to do what we think we need to do with it. And if it means stacked houses or the Trump Tower, let's say, then that's our choice. I would maybe not say the Trump Tower, maybe the Bailey Tower. But at the end of the day, I think we need to make sure that we are making arrangements that we are doing our best to satisfy the need of not only the municipality, but the county. The county is having a heck of a time with labor shortage as well. We need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we're only going to satisfy our own problems, then we're not really being a county neighbor, and all the other counties around, or all the municipalities around us will see that as, well, you're only doing this to benefit you, not benefit the rest of us who have all the same problems. And then we all can collaborate and discuss on how to most beneficially our use of our land. And land use planning is the biggest thing that we have now, because we have not very much of it, not very much stuff that we can do with it. So I think ultimately, The phase 1 and phase 2 in my mind is just the next step to getting more information that council can take all of this report with the information that Denise has provided us today and say, what do we want to do with this piece of property? And ultimately, take into consideration all aspects. The Legion, ratepayers, how is this going to affect budget for the next 25 years? All that stuff needs to be taken into consideration when we make that decision. And ultimately, it needs to be not an emotional decision. It needs to be based on fact and what we need, not what we want.
Bailey Towers, I like that. Paul, and then Kevin.
Yes, through you, for phase 1 and 2, how long does that take?
I wouldn't think it would take very long. Typically, you'd put out something like a request for quotations, get a few quotes from some different engineering firms. Phase 1, as I said, is a tabletop exercise. They'll be doing some of the historical analysis that, quite frankly, has already been done. And then phase 2. So once they come to that sort of determination, yes, you know, it's essentially step 2 is warranted, which I think based on the history of the property it would be. Stage 2, it'd be a time when they can get in there to do boreholes. I don't think the snow would be an impediment. So I would think a period of months.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Other questions or comments, concerns?
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
With this information and the availability of housing going forward with different projects, Hutton Heights, the one to the east, I think we have a great opportunity to fulfill all aspects of housing requirements. We can have for single floor for people that need it, and family homes for people that need it, and smaller accommodations for people who need it. I think this would be an excellent spot, being in town, to focus on one of those priorities. I think we've got an amazing chance in front of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to read the motion. I don't think I have yet. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated February 18th, 2020 regarding the future of the Wingham Trailer Park. And further, that the council authorize staff to undertake a phase 1 and phase 2 condition assessment with the upset limit of $35,000. And further, the Director of Finance be directed to amend the draft 2020 budget to include $35,000 for the phase 1 and 2 site condition assessments. And further, the staff be directed to notify the Wingham Legion and the interested purchaser of the council's direction to staff. Do I have a mover? I have Paul. I have Trevor seconding. Last chance for comments. Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you, girls. Public Works. 7.4.1 surplus and sale of the Wingham Armory building. I think I'm going to get a mover and a seconder and then let you speak to it, okay? That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Public Works dated February 18th, 2020 regarding the surplus and sale of the Wingham Armories building for information. And further, the Council declare the Wingham Armories building surplus to the needs of the municipality. And further, that the Council directs staff to advertise the Wingham Armories property and receive written offers until May 1st, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. And further, the staff be authorized to secure the services of McIver Group, I thought it was that, to complete an appraisal of the property. And further, the funds to the upset limit of $2,000 plus applicable taxes be incorporated into the facility budget and given pre-budget approval. Do I have a mover? Paul. Do I have a seconder? Rick. Sean, your turn.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at the February 3rd meeting of this year, Council stated a desire to declare the Wingham Armories facility as surplus to the needs of the municipality. Staff at that point was instructed to move forward with the sale of the property. Now, in order to list the property, there's a couple things we have to do. First off, Council must formally declare the property surplus. after which we can get a value of the property through the appraisal process. And currently, we're required to get at least one written opinion or appraisal of the fair market value prior to any sale. As far as this process goes, it is considered best practice to secure an appraisal through a certified appraiser, certainly for the disposition in the municipal building. The benefit of that is they use a number of different methods to determine value. In this particular case, they would look at direct comparison approach as well as income approach, if they deem that applicable to develop a well-rounded appraised value. And this way, they're ensuring both the market value of the property as well as the revenue potential of the building would be considered in an assessment. We looked at how we would go about doing that, and it occurred to us that we've already gone through the procurement process as a municipality when we were dealing with the sale of the ESTC. At that time, MacGyver Group was selected based on their extensive experience in the field. They were very competitively priced, and we have the benefit now looking back, and they did certainly perform the services very well. They were timely, and they provided a very clear and concise report. So for that reason, we would recommend that if it was a desire of council to go ahead with the use of a certified appraiser, we would definitely recommend using MacGyver Group to do the assessment on the Armories building. Cost for this appraisal, you'll see in your package, they provided an estimate of $2,000 plus applicable taxes, and this would have to be incorporated into the 2020 operating budget for the facility. The information provided in that appraisal then would certainly assist council in assessing any offers that they may get on the property, and I think that's one of the real values. You don't know what you're going to get coming at you. What may look like an unreasonable proposal could, based on the appraisal, turn out to be a very good offer. And all that being said, I think this report relates directly to action 4.5 of Council's new strategic plan under the infrastructure goal, in that it aids in the determination of the next steps relating to the surplus of municipal infrastructure assets.
Thank you, Sean. Go ahead, Trevor.
Sean, would this assessment take into consideration the heritage status of that building?
Through you, Worship, no. We were looking at this as, I mean, he may very well consider it, but we were looking at the heritage status as an independent item. What we would do, if this is all approved, we would move forward with the decertification of the property at the same time that we were going through the sale process. The benefit of that is that by starting the deregistration process, we'll be well on our way. If for some reason somebody put an offer in and said, I want this because it's the Wingham Armories and because it's a heritage building, we have the ability to stop the process. So we would run the two processes concurrently.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. We're going to drop right down to 8.1. The Wingham Ward Police Services Board OPP Detachment Commander Report for January. Trevor, go ahead and speak to it first.
Yeah, Reva, the fact that the Police Services Board the process has changed over, now that we're starting into the second year of the OPP contract, the Police Services Board has decided that quarterly meetings is sufficient to what their need. There isn't any budget discussions or anything of that nature. It's more operational discussion. So the intention was that the council, that the Police Services Board would only communicate or have an actual board meeting in March, June, September, and December, I believe. So the impression of that was is if council or had questions or issues about that have come up in the midst of all that, when they see these reports, because we've asked the detachment commander to continue to maintain the report and send it out to council, that council would now see this report and they actually have to make a motion on it as opposed to just having it consent. So then, at least then there can be some discussion at council as to relates to how it's going, how it's not going, what are their thoughts, what are their concerns. And then when we go to our police services board meeting, we can have a fruitful discussion about maybe comments that have been made at this council chamber, and me as chair, and obviously Rick as well, being at the table, can have some discussion with the detachment commander and senior administration with the OPP to have discussions about how the contract's working or not working. So I think ultimately that's the intention. So like, I would take any questions or any comments from council as it relates to the commander's report. I did want to mention in this same discussion that we have now, well, we will in March have a full complement of a board again, which we're still trying to figure out the ramifications or what they're doing at the ministry level. There is been two provincial appointees that will be being sworn in March. One's in March and one's in June. So we'll have a full complement of board again. But at this point, the fact that they're not sworn in, I don't know that it's public knowledge. So I'm just going to leave it as that. If you want to, until they're sworn in, I would take questions as it relates to the report.
Let's do the motion first, and then we'll accept questions for Trevor. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby accepts the OPP Detachment Commander Report, Wingham Ward, for the month of January for information purposes. Do I have a mover? I have Christopher, I have Paul. Questions or comments, concerns? Go ahead, Paul.
I like seeing it, so I sure hope, as Trevor says, we're going to keep getting it. It's great.
Great. Anyone else? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Correspondence. Oh. Yeah. We have Brian Hill to propose for office space for the airport. I don't have a motion or anything on that. So I think this is just open to council. I'll start by saying that my understanding is this is an accountant and he wants to put his accounting business out there. I see that as just not compatible at all. I'm not sure what we're gonna be doing with the airport over the next year anyway. I suggest, if we could have and please everybody speak up, I just would suggest a motion of sending a letter back to him saying thank you, but no thank you. Okay, does anybody else want to speak to it or give a motion out? Go ahead, Paul.
I think under this circumstance, you read that just pass on this.
Okay. Trevor?
Yeah, I don't think it's the right fit, honestly, but I don't have any concern with staff communicating to Brian Hilt about the open downtown offices that we have.
Very good.
We've got some open space, and we've got people are willing to rent. If you're wanting to have discussions, I think we're more than willing to communicate and help you find out who those people are. I think having them downtown would be more effective for him than it would be out there, in my mind. But again, that's his choice. But I think ultimately, from our perspective, I don't think it's a right fit. And I think the better fit would be our downtown core.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Reeve, I agree with you. I think he's looking for a sweet deal, and Trevor, yeah, there's lots of space down here, so you should make that as in the reply that if he's looking for an office, we've got other ones.
So I can just turn to the clerk. Do you need a motion for that or just direction?
Yeah, I can read a draft motion based on the conversation.
Oh yeah, we have a motion coming up.
That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby deny the request and communicate to the requester that there is available office space in the downtown core of Wingham.
I'll move it, Reeve.
Trevor and Paul, other questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Cap.
Well, just by his wording here, he's looking for a fly-in office.
Oh, is he?
He's a pilot. He's looking at just with my mobility and my love of aviation, multiple days working at the Levan or working. I don't know if it's in here, but yeah, it's more. He's looking for a fly-in where he can fly his plane in to his office and It's not just an officer that he would come uptown for.
Yeah.
It would be one that he's looking for
Kinda cute, it's a good fit for him, but not for us.
unless there was 15 other people like him that wanted to come up.
Yes. Maybe send them to Godridge, they're expanding theirs, if you wanna add that to it. Okay, anybody else? I call the motion, all in favor, carries. I'm gonna go down to reports now. I'm gonna start with the Reeves report. I think we're all quite happy here to see what's going on with the Sazam. They're really moving forward. They're having an open house on Saturday at the Westcast Complex at the Hot Stove Lounge, 10 a.m. starting time for questions and answers. There's been a bit of buzz on the Facebook, my wife tells me, so if everybody can just let them know all the questions and answers and worries and concerns they have, that's where to be, and that's when to ask. Yep, this coming Saturday.
Sorry, in 10 a.m. you said?
Yep, 10
Thank you.
a.m., yep. They would like contractors out, anybody that's interested buying, building, helping, my understanding. So, local contractors that aren't busy.
Yeah.
You know why I laugh. Everybody, no, but on a serious note, on a very serious note, no, contractors and everybody, we'd like everybody to come out and have a conversation with them. I'll be there myself. So that's a great thing going on. The labor acute shortage meetings have expanded to include representatives from South Huron, and I'll elaborate on this a little further when my motion comes up. I believe it's a good thing for us to get behind. We've been working very hard on it. We actually have different meetings going on, such as the newcomers meeting. I went to the one last week. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting, and it was well attended. And the volunteers that are stepping forward are doing a fabulous job of making these people feel at home. Those are the kind of things that are happening because of it. So again, it's coming along great, and I'll talk further on that next week. I attended and welcomed the newcomers. Well, I just talked about that, so we won't have to add that one. And it sounds like the Winter Palooza was a lot of fun and had a great time again this year. Thanks to all the volunteers and all the people that supported it, and the staff for running it on a holiday. Thank you very kindly. I think that's it for me, so we're going to move on now to council members. Anybody that has verbal or written update that you sit on boards or committees? Anybody? Go ahead, Rick.
In regards to our CHIP meeting, the Coalition for Hearing Injury Prevention, we're in the early stages of setting up a new team or adding to our team in regards to Act 2.0. That's to the NPO. It's a pilot, and invites are going out right now to the service groups and any other representation we can get. It's much like the Coalition. And the emphasis on this process is on teamwork, like not just sitting in chairs. And we're looking for the community support. And Vision Zero is a global movement transforming the way we use, interact, and travel on our roads. And the vision is being zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries.
That's great. Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Seeing none? Sorry, Paul?
Yeah, sorry. Through you, Reeve. Yeah, we had town hall theater meeting, and Doug Kyvenhoven is going to come and present something to you. He's got some things going on now. And also with Alice Monroe, just had a meeting there, and they pretty well have everybody ready for the school, all lined up, and I think they're waiting for one more reply from one person. So it's going to involve the schools in our area. And all the programs this year are going to be either here and then on the Sunday they're going to be at Blythe. So it's all staying in North Huron. So it's all coming to fruition now. So there'll be more of an update next month.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, that wandered over to Bayfield or something for a while. You're saying that they're not involved?
They go there the second day, but now something to do with that is where they have put people up at nighttime, and that sort of went through, but they wanna have it in North Huron this year.
Oh, that's good. Great.
So they'll maybe go over there for rooms, but the guy, the Lux gentleman,
Mhm.
is hoping we can get rooms there. There's connections there, so.
Great, thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Seeing none? What's that? Oh, comments by your members, sorry. Any comments by the members, just comments? Things you've heard, things you're worried about? Seeing nothing, we shall move on. Notice of motion, this is the motion I talked about, and it's just a notice of motion, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing tonight, it'll come back up in 2 weeks. Bylaws, a bylaw number 11.1, bylaw number 12-2020, a bylaw to amend section C, building classes and fees, to bylaw number 117-2019, being a bylaw to establish fees and charges for the township of North Huron. Do I have a mover?
That's the third and final reading of that.
And this is the third and final reading. Oh, sorry, Anita and Kevin. All in favor? Carries. 11.2, a bylaw to authorize cost recovery fees with respect to the fire department's specific response. Do I have a mover? I have Paul, I have Kevin. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 19/2020, a bylaw to provide for drainage works for the township of North Huron and Asheville, Colburn, Wawanosh in the county of Huron, rental municipal drains. Do I have a mover?
And that's being provisionally adopted.
Provisionally adopted. I have Anita and I have Chris. Chris, only first and second. This only first.
provisionally adopted.
Question?
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't find the figures correct. It says whereas 348,000 attributed to North Huron, but if you go to page 5 of Dietrich's report, it says our contribution, not our contribution, but attributed to is $204,000. And conversely, the ACW amounts have flipped. So they're not matching.
Okay. So I think we better vote this one down till that's,
We can look into that and make the change if necessary. So you're just saying the two numbers, the 348,000 should be Asheville, Colburn, Wawanosh, and the 293 should be North Huron?
Actually, those two figures are not even mentioned.
Even.
If you look on page 5, you can see what they are.
Yeah, it says sorry, Reeve, it
No,
just
go ahead.
says the work per township in North Huron would be 204,800, and the estimated cost work per township of Asheville, Colburn, and Wawanosh would be 437.
Yeah.
So,
So I can follow up with Dietrich Engineering to find out where those numbers came from.
did Dietrich Engineering provide this bylaw?
They reviewed it, yes.
Okay.
How, I was wanting to mention it when he was here, but I didn't know if I could go ahead on the agenda to include things. Can you do that? It is
I
associated,
would.
okay, I should have mentioned it then.
it's okay, it's okay. I will. So are we okay to pass this bylaw and have those changes? Because we can always bring the bylaw back, right?
Yep, so we're only giving it first and second reading.
It's only first and second
Okay.
reading anyway. Okay, did I have a mover? And a
Yeah,
seconder?
I think that's-
Okay, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 2020, a bylaw to license, regulate and govern the ownership of the taxi drivers and the taxi cabs. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin and I have Trevor. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 21/2020, a bylaw to amend the North Huron Human Resources Policy. Do I have a mover? I have Anita, I have Rick. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 22/2020, to bylaw to adopt the commemorative tree and bench policy. Do I have a mover? I have Chris and I have Rick. All in favor? Carries. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held Monday, March 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. here at the Chambers. The next House and Dam Committee meeting will be held Wednesday, February 19th here at the Chambers. The next budget meeting will be held Thursday, February 20th, here at the Chambers. The next North Huron Museum Committee will be held on Monday, March 2nd, here at the Chambers. The next general meeting of the Wingham BIA will be held Thursday, February 20th at 7 p.m. at the Knights Lounge of the North Huron West Cass Community Complex. Is there, Trevor, buy tickets for that, or is,
Sorry,
if I wanted to go to, you're a representative on the BIA?
to the BIA annual meeting, there's no tickets, tonight, it's an open meeting.
Oh, is it?
It's an open meeting, all BIA meetings are open to the
Oh, I
public.
thought it was a dinner.
Nope, it's
Oh.
just the annual general meeting for them
Okay.
to talk about the budget and the upcoming budget, that's all it is.
Any
Okay.
elections that they are required to hold, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Other business. We have, the Court of Revision municipal drain. 11.1.1 date of the Court of Revision for instruction to tender. That the Court of Revision for the rental municipal drain 2020 be set for March 20th, 2020 at 10 a.m. and that the project be tendered with results to be collected on the same date and presented subject to any appeals. And further, that any appeals must be received in writing 10 days prior to the Court of Revision in accordance with section 52 -2 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter D17, amended by 2010 C16, Schedule 1 S21. Do I have a mover? I have Anita and I have Christopher. All in favor? Carried. Members of the Court of Revision, that the members of the Court of Revision for the Maitland Municipal Drains 2020 consist of 3 members, 2 members from the Township of North Huron and 1 member from the Township of ACW.
So now you need to appoint 2 members from North Huron to sit on the
Okay.
Court of Revision, which is the March 20th, 2020 date.
Okay, so do we have 2 people who would like to step forward? Chris and Anita. We should have a bit of an explanation on what's all involved in the Court of Revision, if you guys haven't done it before. We'll do that after we do the motion. Do I have a motion to have them put on? I
I'll
have
make a
Kevin
motion.
and I have Paul. All in favor? Carries. I'm not sure whether it be Sean or who would like to, oh, okay. Carson, tell them what they're into.
Through you, your worship, so, members of the Court of Revision, basically are hearing the, any appeals related to the assessments, that were outlined in the final report that Dietrich Engineering presented. And basically, members can't make changes to the technical aspects of the report, but are only considering appeals related to the actual assessments and how those assessments are divided out. Right, so the project itself, if it was, I believe it was $600-something thousand. So at the Court of Revision, there can't be changes made to the project itself, just how people are assessed. Basically, Court of Revision members hear appeals on 3 grounds. 1, basically that their land or road was assessed too high or low. 2, that there's a land or road that should have been assessed but wasn't, or that due consideration was not given to the land's use. And so basically the Court of Revision decides whether those appeals are valid or not. As council will be aware from the report presented by Dietrich Engineering, so this is a boundary municipal drain. So that is why the Court of Revision is, some of the work being done is partly in North Huron and partly in Asheville-Cove-Wallanosh. So the Court of Revision is 3 members, 2 from North Huron, and then Asheville-Cove-Wallanosh will be appointing a member as well.
Yeah. There's no closed session tonight, so 15 is the confirmation of a bylaw. Bylaw number 23/2020 being a bylaw of the Township of North Huron to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with in the Council of the Township of North Huron. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. I have Paul, almost sleeping guy. All in favor, carry. Thank you very much. Adjournment, that the Council of Township of North Huron agrees that being no further business before council, the meeting hereby adjourns at 8 o'clock. Rick, Kevin, all in favor? Carries. Thank you, everyone.